Roger. Ready to move out.
Have you ever wondered why the most iconic Batmobile ever built was purchased for exactly $1? What if I told you this legendary crime-fighting machine started life as a forgotten concept car, and the secrets behind its transformation are stranger than any villain Batman ever faced? Today we're counting down 20 hidden secrets about the 1966 Batmobile that will completely change how you see this television legend. Number 20. The $1 purchase. George Barris didn't steal the Lincoln Futura, but he might as well have. Ford sold him their $250,000 concept car for exactly $1 in 1965. That's not a typo. One single dollar bill changed hands, and Barris owned the foundation of television history. Ford had spent over $2.5 million in today's money having the Futura built by Ghia in Italy back in 1955. The car toured auto shows for years, dazzling crowds with its pearl white paint and bubble canopies. But by the mid-1960s, Ford was done with it. The Futura sat gathering dust in a storage facility, costing the company money every month. Keeping concept cars was expensive, and Ford had already milked every drop of publicity from their space-age showpiece. When Barris approached them about buying it, Ford practically begged him to take it away. The paperwork shows the sale price is $1, the legal minimum for a valid transaction. Barris later admitted he couldn't believe his luck. He'd remembered seeing the Futura years earlier and thought it looked like something Batman would drive. That instinct, combined with Ford's eagerness to clear warehouse space, created one of entertainment's greatest bargains. The dollar bill Barris used is now worth more than the entire original sale. Number 19. The impossible 3-week deadline.
An inch or so in, it bolts up.
ABC gave George Barris 3 weeks to deliver the Batmobile. 3 weeks. Most custom car builds take 6 months minimum, often stretching into years for complex projects. Barris had 21 days to transform a decade-old concept car into the Dark Knight's ultimate weapon. The network needed the car immediately for filming, and delays weren't acceptable. Barris worked around the clock with his team, sleeping maybe 3 hours a night. They started by stripping the Futura down to bare metal, assessing what could stay and what needed modification. The pearl white paint had to go, replaced with glossy black and fluorescent orange accents. Those orange stripes weren't just for style. They photographed better on black and white television, which most Americans still watched in 1966. The bubble canopies required modification to look more aggressive. The front end needed that distinctive bat nose treatment. Every modification happened simultaneously, with different craftsmen working on separate sections. The famous bat emblems on the wheels were fabricated from scratch in the shop. The rocket tubes were hand-built from aluminum and fiberglass. When they delivered the Batmobile to the studio lot, crew members could smell fresh paint. The car was so new that Barris warned everyone not to touch it for another day. Adam West climbed in anyway, too excited to wait. Number 18. Dean Jeffries. Almost built it. Instead, here's something most Batman fans don't know. George Barris wasn't ABC's first choice to build the Batmobile. That honor went to Dean Jeffries, another legendary Hollywood car customizer. Jeffries had already started building a completely different Batmobile from scratch when the network approached him. His design featured a more angular, aggressive look based on contemporary sports cars. Jeffries worked for weeks on his version, fabricating a custom chassis and hand-forming the body panels. His Batmobile would have looked nothing like what we got. Then, ABC dropped a bomb. They needed the car in 3 weeks, not 3 months. Jeffries, being honest about his capabilities, told them it was impossible. His custom build required at least 2 more months to complete properly. He refused to rush the work and deliver something substandard. ABC panicked and called Barris, who had a reputation for lightning-fast builds. Barris assessed the situation and remembered the Futura sitting in his shop. He could modify an existing car much faster than building from scratch. When Jeffries heard Barris landed the job, he was reportedly furious. He'd invested significant time and money in his design, all wasted because ABC changed their timeline. Jeffries eventually finished his Batmobile design anyway, modifying it slightly to create the Black Beauty for the Green Hornet TV series. Both cars appeared on television, but only one became a cultural phenomenon. Number 17. Bill Cushenberry's secret metalwork. George Barris gets all the credit, but the man who actually shaped the metal was Bill Cushenberry. Cushenberry was a legend in the custom car world, known for making metal do impossible things. He could hand-form curves and contours that other builders only dreamed about. Barris brought him in specifically for the Batmobile project, because he needed someone with extraordinary metalworking skills. Cushenberry worked 18-hour days in his Monterey, California shop, which became ground zero for the transformation. He hand-formed those iconic wheel openings, creating the aggressive stance that made the Batmobile look ready to pounce. The way the fenders flowed into the body, that smooth integration that looks almost liquid, that was Cushenberry's signature touch. The bat nose wasn't easy either. They had to extend the front end and create that distinctive pointed shape while maintaining structural integrity. Remember, this car had to actually drive at high speeds for chase scenes, not just sit pretty on a turntable. Cushenberry reinforced the frame, strengthened critical stress points, and made sure the modifications wouldn't compromise safety. He obsessed over every curve, every angle, making minute adjustments that most people would never notice, but he knew were wrong. Years later, Cushenberry rarely talked about his work on the Batmobile. He was modest like that, letting Barris take the spotlight while he quietly shaped automotive history. Number 16. The overheating Lincoln engine swap.
We used a big block LS3 engine that had to fit under the hood. We have effects.
The Lincoln Futura came with a massive Lincoln Y-block V8 engine that had one critical flaw. It ran hotter than the surface of Mercury. This wasn't a problem when the Futura was cruising auto shows for short periods, but it became a nightmare on a Hollywood film set. During the first week of filming, the engine overheated constantly. Cameras would roll, the Batmobile would idle for 30 seconds, and steam would start pouring from under the hood. Production would stop. Everyone would wait an hour for the engine to cool down. Then they'd try again with the same results. Time is money in television production, and ABC was burning through their budget waiting for an engine to cool. Barris made a practical decision. Out came the original Lincoln engine, in went a Ford Galaxy 390 cubic inch V8. The swap wasn't simple. Different engine meant different motor mounts, different transmission setup, different cooling system, different exhaust routing. They had to modify the frame rails and fabricate custom brackets. But it worked. The Galaxy engine was more reliable, easier to maintain, and most importantly, it didn't turn the Batmobile into a mobile sauna. It could idle for hours under hot studio lights without overheating. Parts were easier to find too. When something broke during filming, they could get replacements at any local Ford dealership, instead of special ordering rare Lincoln components. Number 15. Multiple Batmobiles built on Ford Galaxy chassis. Here's something most fans don't realize. There wasn't just one Batmobile. After creating the hero car from the Lincoln Futura, Barris needed backups because the TV production schedule was absolutely brutal. They couldn't risk the main car breaking down and shutting down an entire day of filming. So Barris built replicas, but he didn't have more Futuras lying around collecting dust. Instead, he used Ford Galaxy chassis as the foundation. These backup Batmobiles were numbered 2, 3, and 4, and each served different purposes. The Galaxies were perfect donor vehicles because they were big, powerful, and readily available at any Ford dealership. Barris could buy them cheap and transform them into Batmobile replicas. The fiberglass bodies he created captured the Futura's distinctive lines almost perfectly. On camera, viewers couldn't tell the difference between the original and the replicas. Each replica was slightly different though. Some had functional gadgets that actually worked. Others were stripped down specifically for stunt work, where things might get damaged. The engines varied too. Some got 427 big blocks for serious power. Others kept smaller engines for reliability and fuel economy. The replicas were actually more practical than the original Futura-based car. The Galaxy chassis were stronger and could take more abuse. Parts were everywhere, available at any Ford parts counter. When something broke during filming, and things always break, they could fix it quickly and get back to work. These backup Batmobiles kept the show running smoothly while one was being repaired. Number 14. Batmobile number 3 never appeared on TV.
It looks as if the Batmobile used in the 1960s TV series will be sold at auction in January at the annual
Batmobile?
Of all the replica Batmobiles George Barris built, number 3 had the strangest fate. It was completed, painted, and fully ready for action with all the gadgets and details perfect. But it never appeared on the TV show, not even once in a single episode. Instead, Barris used it exclusively for promotional appearances across the country. While its siblings were racing through Gotham streets on television screens, number 3 was touring America. It showed up at car shows, shopping mall grand openings, state fairs, auto dealerships, anywhere they needed a Batmobile for publicity and fan events. This actually made perfect business sense. The TV cars took an absolute beating from stunt work. Chase scenes are hard on vehicles, and the constant filming wore them down quickly. But number 3 stayed absolutely pristine because it never faced those rigors. It was the show car, the one that fans could see up close and personal. Barris made sure it was perfect for these appearances. Every detail was museum quality. The paint was flawless without a scratch. The chrome gleamed like mirrors. Even the interior was immaculate, never subjected to actors climbing in and out dozens of times per day. Number 3 became the most seen Batmobile in person, even though it never appeared on screen. Thousands of fans sat in it at events over the years. Kids got their pictures taken with it. It was the people's Batmobile, accessible to the public in ways the working TV cars never could be. Number 13, the frame was stretched, 11 inches frame. The Lincoln Futura was already a long car, but George Barris wanted more. He wanted the Batmobile to look impossibly long, like it was breaking the laws of physics and proportion. So, he did something radical that most people never notice. He stretched the frame by 11 inches. That doesn't sound like much, but in an automotive building, it's absolutely huge. They had to cut the frame in specific locations and add steel sections, then weld everything back together with precision. Every component in the car had to be modified to accommodate the stretch. The drive shaft needed to be longer to connect the transmission to the rear axle. The brake lines had to be extended. Fuel lines had to be rerouted and lengthened. Electrical wiring had to reach further. Everything from the parking brake cable to the exhaust system required modification. The stretch wasn't just for dramatic looks either. It improved the car's proportions specifically for television cameras. TV cameras of the 1960s had a tendency to compress images, making things look shorter and squatter than they actually were. The extra length compensated for this optical compression. On screen, the Batmobile looked perfectly proportioned instead of stubby. The stretch also helped tremendously with weight distribution. That heavy engine sat up front, and all the crime-fighting equipment added weight in back. The longer wheelbase balanced everything better, making the car handle more predictably at speed. It was more stable during chase scenes and less likely to spin out during quick maneuvers. Number 12, Batmobile number 4, was a drag racer.
Oops, you better get a professional shoe.
While the other Batmobiles were fighting crime on television, number 4 had a completely different destiny. George Barris built it as a full-blown drag racer, a quarter-mile monster designed to go ridiculously fast in a straight line. This wasn't just a Batmobile with a bigger engine. This was a purpose-built racing machine that happened to look like Batman's car. Under the hood sat a 427 cubic inch police interceptor engine, but not just any stock 427. This one was built specifically for maximum horsepower. High compression pistons slammed up and down. A radical racing camshaft opened valves with aggressive timing. Multiple carburetors gulped fuel and air. The engine put out over 500 horsepower, absolutely insane for the mid-1960s. The chassis was heavily reinforced for the violent forces of drag racing launches. The suspension was modified for optimal weight transfer, lifting the front wheels during hard acceleration. They even installed a wheelie bar at the rear to keep the front end from lifting too high and flipping the car backward. But here's the wild part. It still looked exactly like the TV Batmobile. Barris wanted fans to think Batman could really go this fast. The drag racing Batmobile toured the country, racing at strips from California to New York. It ran legitimate times too, posting mid-12-second quarter miles that were genuinely impressive for that era. Crowds went absolutely wild seeing the Batmobile launch down the strip with its front wheels in the air. Number 11, Wild Bill Shrewsbury, was the stunt driver.
Distributor. The reason for that is 100 years ago, gasoline was very unreliable.
And while we're at it, how about a quick hole shot on the Gotham City drag strip with the Batmobile?
Behind the wheel of the drag racing, Batmobile sat a man whose name alone tells you everything. Wild Bill Shrewsbury. His nickname wasn't ironic. He was fearless, incredibly talented, and maybe just a little bit crazy in the best possible way. Shrewsbury was already a legend in drag racing circles when George Barris hired him to pilot the Batmobile. He'd driven everything from fuel dragsters to jet-powered cars. The Batmobile was just another day at the office for a driver of his caliber. But driving this particular Batmobile required special skills that most racers didn't have. The car was extremely heavy compared to purpose-built drag cars. The visibility was absolutely terrible. Those bubble canopies looked incredibly cool, but they made it nearly impossible to see properly. The long pointed nose meant Shrewsbury couldn't see the starting line or the Christmas tree lights. He had to judge everything by feel and sound. Shrewsbury adapted quickly, developing special techniques for launching the heavy car without bogging down or spinning the tires uselessly. He learned to feel through the steering wheel when the tires were about to break loose. He could shift the heavy manual transmission perfectly every single time, matching engine speed precisely. Crowds absolutely loved him. He'd do massive burnouts that would fog out half the track with tire smoke. He'd launch so hard the front wheels would lift 2 feet off the ground. Kids watching thought they were seeing Batman himself racing for real. Number 10, the Black Velvet Paint Mystery.
It's them all right. First I'll give that wagon a little touch of bat ray.
Here's a secret from the early days that most people never knew about. The first Batmobile wasn't painted with regular automotive paint. They used something called black velvet paint, also known as flocking. This wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was pure necessity to hide problems from the rushed build. The 3-week deadline meant major compromises in bodywork quality. The fiberglass had ripples and waves. Seams weren't perfectly smooth. Under normal glossy paint, every single flaw would show up like a sore thumb. The hot TV studio lights would highlight every imperfection, making the car look amateurish on camera. So they used velvet paint, a special coating that contained tiny fibers creating a matte, light-absorbing surface. It hid imperfections like magic. Ripples disappeared completely. Seams vanished into the dark surface. The car looked absolutely perfect on camera. The velvet paint had other advantages too. It didn't reflect studio lights back into the cameras, preventing glare that could blow out the exposure and ruin shots. The matte finish also made the car look more menacing and bat-like, almost predatory, but it had serious drawbacks. The finish was extremely delicate. You couldn't wash it with soap and water like normal paint. Rain was a legitimate problem. Even touching it with your hand could leave permanent marks and disturb the fibers. For a working TV production car, this created constant nightmares. Eventually, they switched to conventional glossy black paint on later Batmobiles. Better preparation techniques and more time meant they could use proper automotive paint that looked great and held up to abuse. Number 9, the forward tilting nose. Feature 1.
Turbines to speed.
Ready to move up.
Incredibly clever feature on the replica Batmobiles was the forward tilting nose section. The entire front end, from the windshield all the way forward, could pivot upward on hidden hinges. This wasn't just some cool party trick. It was pure practical engineering, solving a real problem. Getting in and out of the original Batmobile was genuinely difficult. The doors were small and awkwardly positioned. The seats sat extremely low to the ground. Those dramatic bubble canopies made everything worse, restricting headroom. You had to contort your body like a gymnast to squeeze in. Adam West and Burt Ward became absolute experts at what became known as the Batmobile slide, a specific technique for entering gracefully. But for promotional events where fans wanted to sit in the car, this was a nightmare. Kids especially struggled with the awkward entry. The tilting nose solved everything brilliantly. Flip a few latches hidden in the bodywork, and the entire front end lifted smoothly on hydraulic struts. Suddenly, access was incredibly easy. You could step right in without contorting yourself. The engineering was surprisingly sophisticated. The pivot point was carefully calculated for perfect balance. The hydraulic struts were sized to lift the heavy nose section smoothly without slamming. Everything worked reliably even after thousands of operations. This feature appeared on Batmobile number 3 and some other replicas specifically built for tours. It made promotional appearances much more efficient and fan-friendly. Instead of helping every single fan squeeze through the tiny door, handlers could just pop the nose open. Everyone could get in and out easily for photos. Number 8. The constantly changing license plates. Watch the TV series carefully, and you'll notice something really odd. The Batmobile's license plate keeps changing throughout the series. Sometimes it reads 2, F3567. Other episodes show Beat 1 clearly visible. Occasionally it displays a completely different number. This wasn't sloppy continuity work. They had legitimate reasons for using different plates in different situations. The 2 F3567 plate was an actual registered California plate. They used this specific plate for any real street driving on public roads. When they filmed on Sunset Boulevard or other Los Angeles streets, they needed legal registration to satisfy police and avoid getting ticketed. Beat 1 and similar vanity-style plates were props for studio work. These appeared during controlled filming on the studio lot or closed sets where registration didn't matter legally. They looked much better on camera and were easier for viewers to read. They reinforced the Batman connection immediately. The license plate changes actually tell us something fascinating about 1960s television production methods. They were making a show quickly on a tight budget. If they needed to film a scene on actual city streets, someone would slap on the legal plate quickly. Back at the studio for the next scene, time for the prop plate. Sometimes in the chaos of production, they simply forgot to switch them between locations. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot the legal plate in obvious studio scenes, or prop plates visible during location shoots on public streets. It's like a game finding the inconsistencies throughout the series. Number 7. The parachute pack that actually worked.
We put it in 2 modes. So we had like the general driving mode, and then we had the jump mode.
That dramatic parachute pack mounted on the back of the Batmobile wasn't just a prop. It actually functioned, and they used it during filming for one spectacular sequence. The pack contained a genuine military surplus parachute, the kind used for cargo drops from aircraft. George Barris installed it with a pyrotechnic release mechanism that could deploy the chute on command. The sequence required the Batmobile to make a sudden stop, and directors wanted something more dramatic than just hitting the brakes. The parachute deployment scene took 3 days to film and nearly destroyed one of the Batmobiles. The first test deployment went sideways, literally. The chute opened asymmetrically, yanking the car violently to one side and nearly rolling it. The stunt driver, who wasn't Wild Bill Shrewsbury that day, had to fight the steering wheel to keep control. They modified the deployment mechanism and tried again. The second attempt worked better, but ripped the mounting brackets partially off the car from the extreme forces. Engineers had to completely redesign how the parachute pack attached to the frame. The third attempt finally worked perfectly, giving them the dramatic footage they needed. The parachute billowed out beautifully, and the Batmobile stopped in an impressively short distance. However, the forces involved were so extreme, they decided never to use the feature again. The mounting points showed stress cracks, and they worried about catastrophic failure. The parachute pack remained mounted on the car for appearances, but they disabled the deployment mechanism. It became a purely decorative element, though few fans knew it had once actually worked during that single dramatic sequence. Number 6. The Bat phone was a real rotary phone.
How cool it would be if this was actually off Bruce Wayne's desk.
Oh, I do.
So what do you...
Yes, Mr. Wayne. Have you heard Mr. Freeze's scurrilous demands?
That iconic red bat phone mounted in the center console wasn't some futuristic prop. It was a completely standard rotary telephone from the 1960s, just painted bright red. The prop department went to a regular phone store and bought an off-the-shelf Western Electric Model 500, the same phone sitting in millions of American homes. They painted it glossy red, mounted it in a custom bracket, and called it the Bat phone. The phone didn't actually work during filming. It wasn't connected to any phone lines. When Adam West picked it up and talked to Commissioner Gordon, he was acting without hearing anything on the other end. He had to time his pauses and responses based on the script, pretending to hear a voice that wasn't there. This made his performance even more impressive, because he had to make those one-sided conversations look natural. Between takes, the phone became something of a toy for the cast and crew. People would pick it up and make joke calls to imaginary commissioners. Burt Ward once did an entire improvised comedy routine using the Bat phone, cracking up the entire crew. The phone survived decades after the show ended, still mounted in the Batmobile during appearances. Collectors obsessed over it, and replica Bat phones became hot items. Companies actually manufactured and sold red rotary phones, marketed specifically as Bat phone replicas. The irony is that the original wasn't a replica of anything. It was just a regular phone painted red, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions work best. That humble Western Electric phone became one of the most recognizable props in television history without any special modifications beyond a coat of paint. Number 5. The chain cutter was a circular saw blade.
When you think Batman, with people in weird outfits, like the 4 super crooks hanging around here.
Still prove elusive.
That menacing chain cutter that extended from the Batmobile's nose wasn't some custom fabricated bat gadget. It was a standard circular saw blade from a hardware store, mounted on a motorized shaft. The prop department bought a 10-inch carbide-tipped blade meant for cutting wood and metal, painted it black, and attached it to a small electric motor. The blade actually spun during filming, powered by a 12-volt battery hidden behind the dashboard. When Batman needed to cut through chains or barriers, they'd flip a switch and the blade would whir to life with a satisfying mechanical sound. The effect looked incredibly impressive on camera, especially when they filmed it cutting through prop chains made of soft aluminum, painted to look like steel. But the chain cutter caused constant problems during production. The electric motor would overheat after running for just 30 seconds. The blade would sometimes catch on things and jam, burning out motors. They went through 7 different motors during the show's run, constantly replacing burned-out units. The mounting bracket also proved problematic. The spinning blade created vibrations that loosened bolts and cracked welds. Mechanics were constantly tightening and repairing the mounting system. Safety was another concern. A spinning saw blade on the front of a car is genuinely dangerous. They had strict protocols about when it could operate, and crew members had to stay well clear when it was running. Despite all these headaches, the chain cutter became one of the Batmobile's most memorable features. Fans loved seeing it deploy and spin menacingly, never knowing it was just a hardware store, saw blade causing production nightmares. Number 4. The rocket exhaust flames were propane powered. Those dramatic flames shooting from the rear rocket tubes weren't special effects added in post-production. They were real flames from actual propane burners, and they were legitimately dangerous. George Barris installed a propane system with tanks hidden in the trunk and feed lines running to burners mounted inside the rocket tubes. When activated, propane would flow and ignite, creating impressive jets of flame shooting several feet behind the car. The system was crude by modern, Standards: a manual valve controlled propane flow, and a pilot light ignited the gas. The flames looked absolutely spectacular on camera, especially during night filming when they glowed bright orange against the darkness. But this setup terrified the insurance company. Open flames shooting from a moving vehicle presented obvious fire hazards. The propane tanks, if damaged in an accident, could explode catastrophically. Insurance adjusters watched the first flame test and immediately demanded modifications. They required additional safety valves, pressure regulators, and emergency shutoff systems. They mandated that a fire safety officer be present whenever the flames were operating. They even required fireproof blankets covering certain areas of the car. The prop department complied, adding layer after layer of safety equipment. The system became so complex that only one crew member was authorized to operate it. He'd ride in a follow vehicle with a remote shutoff, ready to kill the flames instantly if anything went wrong. Despite all these precautions, the flame system worked flawlessly throughout production. It never caused a fire or injury. But the behind-the-scenes complexity of making those flames happen safely was far greater than viewers ever imagined while watching flames dramatically shoot from the Batmobile's tail. Number 3. Adam West couldn't actually drive it. Well, here's an uncomfortable truth that production tried to hide. Adam West, despite being Batman, was not a great driver of the Batmobile. The car was genuinely difficult to operate. The steering was heavy without power assist. The visibility was terrible through those bubble canopies. The long nose made judging distances nearly impossible. West, who was primarily a theater actor before Batman, simply didn't have extensive experience driving unusual vehicles. During the first week of filming, he scraped the Batmobile against a wall while parking. Nobody was hurt, but the damage required a full day of repair work. Production quietly assigned a driving coach to work with West, teaching him the car's quirks and limitations. The coach rode along during rehearsals, giving constant instruction. For most driving scenes, they use camera tricks to minimize West's actual driving. Wide shots showing the Batmobile cruising through Gotham, that's a stunt driver behind the wheel, not West. Close-ups of West's face while driving, the car is usually sitting still with crew members rocking it to simulate motion. The handful of scenes where West actually drove were carefully controlled. They'd close off streets, remove obstacles, and plan simple maneuvers. Even then, multiple takes were often necessary to get usable footage. Burt Ward, interestingly, was a much better driver. He'd grown up around cars and had a natural feel for the Batmobile's handling. There were discussions about having Robin drive more often, but that didn't fit Batman's character. By the third season, West had improved significantly through practice. He could handle the car competently for simple scenes, though stunt drivers still did anything remotely challenging. Number 2. The Batmobile was stolen and recovered. In 1968, between seasons, the original Lincoln Futura-based Batmobile was stolen from a promotional appearance. The car had been on display at a shopping center in the San Fernando Valley when thieves struck overnight. Security was minimal, just a velvet rope and a single guard who'd stepped away for coffee. When he returned, the Batmobile was gone. The theft made national news. Batman was at peak popularity, and stealing his car was like stealing a piece of America. Police launched a massive investigation. Tips poured in from across California. People reported seeing the Batmobile everywhere. Most sightings were false alarms, people spotting any black car and assuming it was the stolen vehicle. George Barris was devastated. This wasn't just a prop, it was his masterpiece, the creation that had made him a household name. He offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to recovery. After 3 agonizing weeks, police received an anonymous tip about a warehouse in Riverside County. Officers raided the location and found the Batmobile hidden under tarps, along with several other stolen vehicles. The thieves had planned to repaint it and sell it to a private collector, not realizing how recognizable it was. 4 men were arrested and charged with grand theft auto. The Batmobile was returned to Barris with surprisingly little damage. Some interior switches had been damaged during the theft. and the paint had some scratches, but everything was repairable. Barris spent 2 weeks restoring it to perfect condition. The incident prompted much better security at future appearances. The Batmobile would never again be left with just a velvet rope for protection. Number 1. It sold for $4.6 million at auction.
Adam West television series.
At Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale auction as part of the Salon Cars. It's a selection of rare and...
In January 2013, the original Lincoln Futura-based Batmobile crossed the auction block at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale, and the automotive world held its breath. This wasn't just any movie car. This was the Batmobile, the hero car from the TV series, the one that started everything. George Barris had owned it for decades, occasionally loaning it for appearances, but never seriously considering selling. But at 87 years old, he decided it was time to find a new caretaker. The pre-auction buzz was absolutely insane. Collectors from around the world flew to Scottsdale specifically for this car. Barrett-Jackson promoted it relentlessly, knowing they had something special. When the Batmobile rolled onto the auction stage, the crowd erupted in applause. The auctioneer began the bidding at $100,000. Within seconds, it hit $1 million. The bidding slowed briefly, then accelerated again. $2 million. $3 million. The tension in the room was electric. Serious collectors were battling it out, determined to own this piece of television history. At $4 million, several bidders dropped out, but 2 remained locked in combat. The bids climbed in $100,000 increments. $4.2 million. $4.4 million. Finally, at $4.6 million, the hammer fell. The winning bidder was Rick Champagne, a collector and businessman who dreamed of owning the Batmobile since childhood. The price shattered records for TV vehicles, proving the Batmobile's cultural significance transcended mere automotive collecting. That $1 purchase George Barris made in 1965 had appreciated to $4.6 million. Not a bad return on investment for 21 days of work and $1. The 1966 Batmobile remains the most iconic TV car ever created, and these hidden secrets prove why it captured imaginations for nearly 60 years. From its $1 origins to its multi-million-dollar auction price, from functional gadgets to clever camera tricks, this wasn't just a prop. It was a character, a legend, and a masterpiece of automotive customization. George Barris and his team created something that transcended television, becoming a cultural touchstone that defined what a superhero's vehicle should be. If you enjoyed these secrets, smash that like button and subscribe for more automotive legends and hidden Hollywood stories. Drop a comment telling us which fact shocked you most. Did you know about the parachute pack? Were you surprised Adam West struggled to drive it? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next video where we uncover more secrets hiding in automotive history.